Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Growth and Gratitude podcast. We always start with gratitude, as you know, so I will share 3 things that I'm incredibly grateful for, and then I'd like you to pause this audio or video and say out loud 3 things that you are grateful for. So number 1, I am so grateful for trees. I love to lie beneath the tree and just marvel at the miracle that is a tree. Very grateful. Number 2, I am incredibly grateful for nature's chorus of birds and frogs and crickets and other creatures in my yard or in a park or anywhere that I might be outside. And 3, I am so grateful for healthy, delicious food that comes from the earth. In particular, fruits and vegetables and nuts, which I eat a lot of, which is the primary source of nutrients in my diet. And I am so grateful that the earth creates these amazing, miraculous foods for us to nourish our bodies. So what are you grateful for? Those were a little different. They were very earth-based, and there's a reason for that because I'm incredibly grateful to the planet for all that it provides for me. The topic for today is how to love everybody. If you've made it this far, I'm optimistic that you will be open to some of what I have to share. I do want to say a couple of things first. You don't have to love everybody. And I struggle with this. You may feel resistant. I understand. I do too. And I am striving to love everyone. I am striving to feel and express more love in my life. And I know that it can be hard. So what I have to offer today is something that I want you to consider and that I think could potentially help in your life and maybe even help the world in some way. So please just consider it with an open mind and know that I'm not pushing any of the things that I'm saying if they don't feel right for you. But it is about striving to love everybody. So what are the things that I'll cover specifically? First, I want to define a couple of terms that I'll be using so that we're on the same page. Secondly, I want to talk about why it's a valuable, worthwhile way to spend our time and energy to actually strive to be more loving and to love as many people as we can, even when it's difficult. 3, I will share a story that forever inspires me to keep trying to be more loving. And 4, I'll share 2 of the best ways that I have found to love, even when it's hard to love. So let's start with definitions. Okay, let's define love. I looked up a number of different definitions. The one that works the best for me is a feeling of deep affection for someone. It's really important for us to clarify that as we move throughout this conversation, I'm talking about an emotion. I am not telling you to do anything, to say anything, to take any kind of action. We are talking about love as something that you feel within you and that you allow yourself to feel instead of blocking the love or armoring yourself against feeling love towards someone. So loving someone does not mean, or sending someone love or loving kindness does not mean that you condone their behavior. It does not mean you have any contact with them. It does not mean you're obligated to do or say anything in any given situation. That's all up to you. But it just means that you feel a deep feeling of affection for someone, that you choose to feel that emotion. It's not infatuation. It's not codependence. I'm talking about pure, unconditional, true love. And I'm not talking about sexual attraction either. I'm talking about the emotion of love that we feel within ourselves. It's not codependence. Again, it's not about needing anything from anyone or giving anything to anyone. It's a feeling. And if it follows all of these guidelines that I've just expressed, it's my opinion that love is always good for you, always potentially good for another person and good for the world. So, but only if it meets those criteria, and maybe even a couple of others that you've thought of, but I think we understand each other. So when we're talking about love, we're also talking about loving kindness and the feelings of love and kindness towards someone and goodwill towards someone. And this gets into the next term that I wanted to just share and define, the second and last one, and that is metta. And if you follow at all meditation circles or anything that relies in any way on Buddhist principles or many other disciplines, you'll probably hear about metta, M-E-T-T-A, and it is a practice of or an embodying of the spirit of loving kindness. It is working to feel and send loving kindness, unconditional loving kindness toward others. Two fantastic teachers on loving kindness practices and principles are Tara Brach and Sharon Salzberg. I highly recommend checking out their meditations. I'll include some links. So metta is also known as loving kindness practice. And if you, for instance, go to a guided meditation, maybe on YouTube or on any of the websites out there, you may find a guided meditation on loving kindness. And what typically that may include would be something such as, first, saying these mantras or statements of loving kindness toward yourself. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. Because first we must love ourselves and practice loving kindness toward ourselves. Then you might be guided to think of someone who you love, a child, a spouse, a dear friend, someone who you care for very much and who's easy for you to feel and express love toward. And we practice those same statements of loving kindness. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Now, when we go deeper into the practice or the meditation, then we're challenged to think of someone maybe who annoys us a little bit, someone who rubs us the wrong way, someone who we have difficult feelings about, not someone who's harmed us greatly, but we slowly enter into this territory of seeing if we can practice loving kindness toward people who it's not as easy to feel and convey loving kindness towards. So you might choose someone then and imagine them, picture them, and say the same loving kindness statements with that person in mind. Ultimately, the deeper work, the harder work, the hardest work, and many of the practitioners and people who've been teaching for decades are still working toward this, is feeling and expressing this same loving kindness toward those people who it's most difficult for us. They may be people in the public sphere. They may be people who we feel have harmed us greatly in our lives. And I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm sharing with you that this is a practice that is available to you and that many people are working toward so that they can generate more love in the world and forgiveness and kindness. And by the way, I'm not saying that you have to forgive anyone either, or that I'm certainly not saying that you should put up with abuse or mistreatment or anything that you should be practicing clear boundaries around and protecting yourself from. This is all something that's inner work, but believe it or not, that inner work can have a great impact out in the world when it's genuinely done within yourself. It may lead to changed actions, or it just may lead to a different energy that you put out into the world. So that brings me to why. The second point I want to cover, why should we do this? Why on earth should we do the hard work of trying to love everyone or trying to love more people, trying to practice loving kindness, even toward those people that it's hard for us to think of in that way? Because love is good. Again, pure love, unconditional love, not infatuation and codependence and all these unhealthy forms of relationships and emotions that we think are love, but true pure love, in my opinion, is always good when it's a feeling. It's always going to have the potential to do good in the world. It doesn't mean that you're going to act on it in a certain way. It's the feeling, right? It's always good and it always has the potential to do good in the world. If you are a person of faith, I have no doubt that your scripture, that your holy book has messages about loving all people, about practicing loving kindness, acts of kindness, as well as thoughts and feelings of kindness toward all people. Think about your faith. If you're like me and you have a combination of spiritual practices and have studied many, many religious and spiritual approaches, you have an endless source of supply to rely on, of writing and rich history going way back to, as far as my study goes, back to Stoic philosophy and well beyond, well before that. In many, many disciplines, we can find these messages of the value of loving kindness, why it's so important. Now, I already mentioned Tara Brach is one of my most important teachers. I'm about to begin a long study with her in her meditation and mindfulness teacher program, meditation and mindfulness teacher certification program, which I'll be starting. And I'm so excited to work with her and Jack Kornfield in that program for 2 years. So you'll probably hear more about that. And so I'm going to link one of Tara's videos where she talks about loving kindness, Metta. And she says that, of course, you're going to find this in most of the sacred texts, the why, the reasons why it's so important for us to love all people and practice loving kindness. But she also claims that Western science-based studies show, from legitimate studies, things like practicing loving kindness, working to be more loving and to love all people as much as we can, increases positive emotions. It decreases negative emotions. It increases feelings of social connection with others in our lives. It decreases migraines, chronic pain, can relieve symptoms of some degree of PTSD. It activates our empathy centers and emotions. It increases compassion. It increases our gray matter volume. It slows biological aging. It can make you more youthful and happy. It makes you a more helpful and giving and generous person. It can decrease your bias toward others, and it can curb your self-criticism toward yourself, which we talked about in a previous episode. I hope you have listened to or watched the episode on how to be kinder to yourself. And she also reminds us, my friend Tara, that this loving kindness, this drive to be more loving, is effective even in small doses. So if you're even able to practice this 5% more than you currently are, it could create huge change in your life and in the world. She also talks about how so much of why we hold back our love for others, our feelings of love for others, is because of armor that we have built up, and because of our primal brain, fight or flight responses, our fear and our armor that we've built up as protective mechanisms, as coping mechanisms from our past that we no longer need, because she's actually a psychologist as well. And I promise you, there are so many scholars who have very, very valid, both spiritual, but also very much Western science-based evidence that this is worth doing for us. A couple of quotes. Oprah, if you're an Oprah fan, I am. Oprah said, "When you make loving others the story of your life, there's never a final chapter because the legacy continues. You lend your light to one person, and that person shines it on another and another and another and another." It's the ripple effect. It's the butterfly effect, friends. It is real. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." With all of the hate and all of the evil and ultimate death that he suffered at the hands of people who were so evil and vicious toward him, he preached love consistently. There are so many people we can learn from. And be aware that we make up stories all the time about other people that may not be true. They may just be stories that our mind is telling us because they feel true and they're protective. But we have to challenge those and ask ourselves, can I love this person? Can I treat this person kindly? Can I let this little indiscretion that feels so big to me, maybe is being triggered because of something deeper for me and maybe isn't even about me? Can I let it go? Can I love? Can I be kind? Now, the third thing I said I wanted to share with you was a story that inspires me to continue doing this. It's part of the why. It's part of the how you and I have to constantly be finding motivation to do this work, because it's easier not to do it. It's easier to go around in the world and just be angry at everybody and be frustrated by everything and look at what our kids are doing that they shouldn't be doing, and our coworkers are not pulling their weight in ways that we think they should be. Whatever it is, our spouse is not a good enough spouse, it's causing us a lot of pain. And some of that, maybe you want to hang on to, and some of it I encourage you to see if maybe you could let go of. Just take a look, just take an honest look. And I only suggest this because I've done that work and it has helped me enjoy my life and feel so much better and be so much healthier and happier and kinder to other people. So here's the story. And this is a TEDx talk, and I'm going to link the TEDx talk. I strongly encourage you to watch it. But it's about a woman who was in her home on New Year's Eve with her spouse, her husband, and her two twins, her almost 5-year-old twins. And there was a party going on at a neighbor's house. The neighbor's son was having a party, and it sounded like things were going awry. So he went over to check things out. And a lot of time passed, and time kept passing, and she started getting worried and didn't know why he hadn't come back. And if you're imagining the worst, you're correct. He went into the house, and someone there or several people there were not happy that he was trying to ruin the fun, and they beat him. They beat him to death. She lost the love of her life on that night. And not only that, for 5 years, there was a code of silence in the town. No one came forward. The woman's name is Katy Hutchison. And after 5 years, someone finally came forward and admitted to delivering the fatal blow that took her husband's life. His name is Ryan Aldridge. And when he was apprehended, she wanted to meet him. She wanted to see him face to face and ask him why he did this and try to understand why someone could do something so horrific to her family. And people told her, "You're crazy. You can't see him. Let the law enforcement officials deal with this." And she insisted. She sat across from him as he cried and sobbed and used tissue after tissue. He was so remorseful, and he begged for forgiveness. And she said, even in that first meeting, she had to hold herself back from reaching across and hugging him. She felt compassion for him. She was able to see that he was a human being. They ended up spending time together, getting to know each other. She learned about his life and all the granted poor choices he had made in his life through his adolescence. She learned that he had been bullied, that he had a speech impediment, that he felt lost when his parents divorced. She learned that he had lost a friend in a drunk driving crash. Now, none of this excuses what he did, but her learning these things helped her to let go of the anger and the hatred that was only harming her, and to forgive ultimately in some way. The more she knew about him, the more she found that they actually had in common, that she was able to see that they both loved the outdoors, that they both loved art. He showed her his artwork. She was happy for him genuinely when he got married, when he had kids of his own. And she realized that all she wanted was for him to heal himself so that he would never inflict this kind of pain on anyone else. And she was able to come to believe that that had happened. And they actually ended up working together for years as speakers, speaking to young kids about preventing violence and forgiveness and healing the hurts in the world and in their lives. And they did great good in the world. She was able to feel love for him and send him loving kindness, and they were able to heal together. She was able to see his pain. And that leads me to my final point of what are the ways that we can actually do this. 2 ways I'll give you. 1, look for the good in others and look for the pain in others. That's number 1. When you can truly look for the good in others, even if there are things that you think they've done that are terrible, even if you think there are things that are incredibly annoying that you could never get over, that you could never learn to love them because they have these ways that are so different from you. If you become a detective for the good in someone, you will find it. Try to see the good. Maybe you can see the love they have for their child or their pet. Maybe you can learn about the volunteer work that they do. Maybe you can see some way that they've mentored someone and how much that person appreciates what they've done. If you are looking for the good, you will find it. I did this with a client of mine recently. She was working with someone who was just driving her crazy, and she could see all the negativity, and she admitted to confirmation bias, that she was looking for the bad. So she saw it. She understands the negativity bias. And I said, let's just do an experiment where you are a detective for the good in this person. When you're in meetings with this person, when you're in one-on-one interactions with this person, just look for everything good that you can find. And she came back to me a week later and said, it was unbelievable. It was transformative. She found all these lovely, good, wonderful things about this person. And this is rare. This doesn't always happen. But what she said was, I knew that it was changing my energy toward this person. And I actually felt that person's energy toward me change. And the dynamic between us completely shifted. And we became it became easier for us to communicate. We talked freely to each other. The other person was asking for her advice more. So we cannot underestimate the potential power of what making these shifts within ourselves can do, where we can do it and where we feel it's appropriate to do it. I also share the recommendation that we look for the pain that other people have suffered. Everyone has suffered tragedy, disappointment, difficulty. Everyone's been hurt. People have been through so much. Believe me, as a coach, I hear things that people have been through. Almost every coaching client in all the years I've been a coach and all the years I was a professor, when people really open up to me, they cry and they share devastating losses and hurts and harm. If you can just see that and know that, whether or not you know what it actually is, and just have compassion, even for that person who you think is awful. I promise you, there is pain that probably has nothing to do with you, that's somehow triggering something in you that is preventing you from feeling more kindness toward that person. And my second recommendation is see yourself in that person. Look for the common ground. Remember how Katy, who I talked about before, was able to see the common ground even with Ryan, even sitting across from him in jail, knowing that he murdered her spouse, the father of her children. She found common ground with him. She actually came to work with him. You can find that common ground with almost anyone. We can look and see the shared humanity. Here's the truth. We're all one. We're all in this together. We are all siblings. I know that. I think that somewhere deep inside, you know that too. The separation is false. It is arbitrary. We put up walls. We put up boundaries. We can look into someone's soul and see that they are actually us, that we are not so different, that we are not so separate. And I know this. It's hard for me to remember this on a day-to-day basis, but I have experienced this spiritually. I have experienced this at a deep, deep level through things such as deep meditation, not a 5-minute meditation, but deep meditation when you've been in for a long time and you transcend your consciousness, the level of consciousness that we normally exist in. And I've also experienced it with the assistance of plant medicine. You can find your own ways, but I have had those moments of ecstasy, of knowing that our connection with others is real and deeper than we ever could imagine in our regular conscious plane of existence. And I've been able to bring a little of that back into my conscious day-to-day living. So whatever you have, if it's prayer, whatever you have access to that helps you to do that, please use it. And please try to transcend the little differences and the little daily annoyances and the temptation to live in anger and self-righteousness and want vengeance. I know those pulls are strong and they're seductive. In Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, he says anger is the most seductive, alluring, self-righteous emotion because it makes us feel so holier than thou. Let's try to transcend that. Let's try not to give in to that. And when we're angry, when we're disappointed, see where we can find love, where we can find grace, because it will feel better for us. Remember, love is just an emotion that we feel within ourselves. Thich Nhat Hanh said, other people's actions are the result of their own pain, not any intention to hurt you. What if we could believe that? What if we could see ourselves in them? What if we could see that others are in pain just as we are? What if we could see that there is goodness somewhere in them? I know you want to ask right now, what about murderers and rapists? I don't know. I don't have easy answers, but here's what I know. There is someone who loves even that person. If they were my child, I would still love them. And I think you would too. What I know about those people who commit atrocities, dictators, is that they are missing something that you and I have. They're missing something that they didn't get through nature or nurture, whatever it might be. I don't think that you have to love them. But I think that less anger and hatred toward them within yourself might help you and might help the world to be a more peaceful place. One more note on seeing yourself in others. I want to bring up the psychological concept of projection. This is a legitimate well-researched phenomenon, which says that the things that we most dislike in others are things that we know are true about us as well. Watch for that. Be aware of that. Dr. Martha Beck, one of my favorite authors and the most well-loved coaches out there, puts it this way. She says, projection is when you spot what you've got. If it really triggers you when you perceive someone as being hypercritical, please stop and ask yourself honestly, in what areas am I hypercritical of others? If you can't stand it when someone else is being indecisive and can't make up their mind, ask yourself, in what areas of my life am I indecisive? And is that maybe why it's triggering me so much? I know for me, I am really struggling with patience around people who I perceive as being intolerant because of my deep passion and fervor for social justice and inclusion. I need to work on my intolerance for people who I see as, because of my story, being intolerant. Let's do this work together. I promise you, it will help you at work. It will help you with your loved ones. It will help you experience more peace and calm and approach the difficult situations and the difficult relationships in your life. So my ask of you is just to find opportunities. I don't care if it's 2% more, where you can feel the emotion of love, or at least feel more kindness, more grace, a little more forgiveness for anyone in your life who it's hard for you to feel that for. And I think it could make a really big difference. Thank you for listening. I send you so much love, and I feel love for you, every single one of you, and I send you kindness, and I hope that you will practice loving kindness, metta. I hope you will try out a guided meditation that's a loving kindness meditation, or just do it yourself. Send loving kindness to yourself, send loving kindness to others, send loving kindness out into the world, even to the people who it's difficult for you to send it to, even for the people who are causing harm in the world. For you to just send that from your heart could make the world a better place. And I don't think it can hurt. Thanks, friends. Talk to you next time.